Hello, everybody. It's me, Bigfoot, Michigan Rob. How are you? I haven't done one of these in about 2 weeks. Bigfoot Classics. We've all heard the story of Ape Canyon. I got to tell you, this is a little different twist on it. That's the only reason that really I'm presenting this. This is a story told by Fred Beck in 1967 about, and he tells the story through the eyes of his friend that was there in 1924. And again, this is a little different recap or encounter of what happened there. So that's really kind of the reason why I'm doing this, because a lot of us as Bigfoot, whether you're an enthusiast or researcher or just like the stories, it's different than the other ones. So it's from this man's perspective, what he saw. And I thought it was cool, good enough to present to you guys. And please subscribe to Bigfoot Michigan Rob on YouTube. I read this through, and you know what? I enjoyed it. I think you will too. So I'm going to get on with it. And let me just pull this up really quick. And don't forget, on Tuesdays, Beyond BMR at 9 o'clock. Brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob. Thursdays at 1 in the East, found on the channel. And let's get on. The account of the attack of the famous incident, July 1924, when the hairy apes attacked our cabin. We had been prospecting for 6 years in the Mount St. Helens area, near River Lewis in southwest Washington. We had from time to time come across large tracks by creek beds and springs. In 1924, I and 4 other miners were working our gold claim. It was 2 miles east of Mount St. Helens, near a deep canyon now called Ape Canyon. Tom, a great hunter and good woodsman, was always a little bit apprehensive after seeing the tracks. The tracks were large, and we knew that no known animal could have made them, the largest measuring 19 inches long. It was the middle of July, and we had received a good asset on our claim, and everybody was excited. I remember I had a toothache that day, and it was aching, and I had suggested to Tom that he should take me to town to see a dentist. But he was so enthused with the prospects of the gold mine that he did not even answer me. He, in fact, just ignored me. We all came up in his pickup truck, and I had no way to get back to town unless he took me. So we went back to our cabin on the north side of the canyon with my nagging tooth. In fact, I could not even eat the evening's meal. Tom, though apprehensive, was still determined. We had been hearing noises in the evening for about a week. We heard a shrill, peculiar whistling every evening. We could hear it coming from one ridge and then hear an answering whistle from another ridge. We also heard a sound which I could best describe as a booming, thumping sound, just like something was hitting or pounding on its chest. Tom asked me to accompany him to the spring about 100 yards from the cabin to get some water, and suggested we take our rifles, just to be on the safe side. We walked to the spring, and then Hank yelled and raised his rifle. And at that instant I saw it. It was a hairy creature. And he was about 100 yards away on the other side of a little canyon, standing by a pine tree. It dodged behind the tree and poked his head out from the side of the tree. And at the same time, Tom shot. I could see the bark fly out from the tree from each of his 3 shots fired. Someone may say that, well, that was quite a distance to see the bark fly, but I saw it. The creature I judged to have been about 7 feet tall with blackish brown hair. It disappeared from our view for a short time, but then we saw it running fast and upright, about 200 yards down the little canyon. I myself shot 3 times before it disappeared from view. We took the water back to the cabin and explained the affair to the rest of the party, and we all agreed, including Tom, to go home the next morning, as it would be dark before we could get to the car or the truck. We agreed it would be unsound to be caught by darkness on our way out. Nightfall found us in our pine log cabin. We had built the cabin ourselves and had made it very sturdy. It stood for years after the incident and was visited by many sightseers until a few years ago when it was burnt to the ground. The circumstance of the fire unknown. In the cabin, we had a long bunk in which 2 could sleep, feet to feet, the rest of us sleeping on the pine boughs on the floor. At one end of the cabin, we had a fireplace, fashioned out of rocks. There were no windows in the cabin, so darkness found all of us in the cabin. More calm now, my tooth getting better, somehow the excitement just seemed to work a temporary cure on it. We were sitting around puffing on pipes and talking about the trip home the next day. Each of us settled down in this crude but welcoming beds that we had made. We soon fell asleep. About midnight, we were all awakened. Tom, Hank, another member of the party, was sleeping on the floor and was yelling and kicking, but the noise that had awakened us was a tremendous thud against the cabin wall. Some of the chinking had been knocked loose from between the logs and had fell across Tom's chest. He had his rifle in his hand and was waving it back and forth as he kicked and yelled. Tom always slept with a gun nearby. This particular was a Remington automatic. My gun, a .30-30 Winchester. I helped to get the chinking off, and he jumped to his feet. Then we heard a great commotion outside. It sounded like a great number of feet trampling and rattling over a pile of our unused shakes. We grabbed our guns. Tom squinted through the space left by the chinking. By actual count, we saw only 3 of the creatures together at one time. But it sounded like there were many more. This was the start of the famous attack, of which so much has been written in Washington and Oregon papers over the years. Most accounts tell of giant boulders being hurled against the cabin, and say some even fell through the roof, but this was not quite the case. There were very few large rocks around in that area. It is true that many smaller ones were hurled at the cabin, but they did not break through the roof, but hit with a loud bang and rolled off. Some did fall through the chimney of the fireplace. Some accounts state that I was hit in the head by a rock and knocked unconscious. That's not true. The only time we shot our guns that night was when the creatures were attacking our cabin. When they would quiet down for a few minutes, we would quit shooting. I told the rest of the party that maybe if they saw we were only shooting when attacked, they might realize we were only defending ourselves. We could have had clear shots at them through the opening left by the chinking had we chosen to shoot. We did shoot, however, when they climbed up on our roof. We shot round after round through the roof. We had to brace the hewed logged door with a long pole taken from the bunk bed. The creatures were pushing it, and the whole door vibrated from the impact. We responded by firing many more rounds through the door. They pushed against the walls of the cabin as if trying to push the cabin down. But this was pretty much an impossibility. As previously stated, the cabin was a sturdy made building. Tom and I did most of the shooting. The rest of the party crowded to the far end of the cabin, guns in their hands. One had a pistol, the others clutched rifles. everybody seemed stunned and incredulous. The attack continued the remainder of the night, with only short intervals between. A most profound and frightening experience occurred when one of the creatures, being close to the cabin, reached an arm through the chinking space and seized one of our axes by the handle. Before the thing could pull the axe out, I swiftly turned the head of the axe upright so that it caught on the logs, and at the same time Hank shot, barely missing my hand. The creature let go, and I pulled the handle back and put the axe in a safe place. A humorous thing I'll remember was Tom saying, "If you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone, and we'll all go home in the morning." He did not mean it to be humorous, for Tom was dead serious and saying under the impression that the mountain devils, as he called them, might understand and go away. The attack ended just before daylight. Just as soon as we were sure it was light enough to see, we came cautiously out of the cabin. It was not long before I saw one of the ape-like creatures standing about 80 yards away near the edge of Ape Canyon. I shot 3 times, and it toppled over the cliff down into the gorge some 400 feet below. Then Tom said that we should get out of there as soon as possible and not bother to pack our supplies or equipment. After all, he said, it's better to lose them, the equipment that is, than lose our lives. We were all only too glad and agreed. We brought out only that which we could get into our pack sacks. We left about $200 in supplies, powder, and drilling equipment behind. I tried to persuade everyone not to relate the happenings to anyone. They all agreed. But Tom soon let the cat out of the bag as we made our way to Spirit Lake. And Tom went on into the ranger station. He told the ranger earlier about the tracks, and the ranger had replied, "Let me know if you find out what they are." That's just what Tom did, to the puzzlement of the ranger. When we went back home to Washington, he told some of his friends, and somehow the story leaked out to the papers, and the great hairy ape hunt of 1924 was on. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. The story of Ape Canyon, told a little bit differently from an alleged person, a miner that was at the cabin. A lot of similarities, I suppose, to the first story. I found this one to be a good one. Do you believe it? Leave a comment. I appreciate everybody listening in. Subscribe to Bigfoot Michigan Rob on YouTube. Don't forget, Tuesday nights at 9 in the East is Beyond BMR. Thursdays at 1 p.m. in the East is Brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob. You can also find subscriber encounter stories from you guys, subscribers and emailers. And, of course, I do post some of these great classic stories. Until next time, it's Bigfoot Michigan Rob, and I will talk to you on the flip side.